Okay, welcome back. We're on to episode 5 of the Mueller report audiobook. We've moved through Russian hacking attempts on the DCCC and DNC. Now talking about some of the Trump campaign associates' involvement with Russia. Page 76, Part D, discussions about Russia travel by Michael Cohen or candidate Trump. December 2015 to June 2016. Sater's overtures to Cohen to travel to Russia. The late January communication was neither the first nor the last time that Cohen contemplated visiting Russia in pursuit of the Trump Tower Moscow project. Beginning in late 2015, Sater repeatedly tried to arrange for Cohen and candidate Trump, as representatives of the Trump Organization, to travel to Russia to meet with Russian government officials and possibly financing partners. In December 2015, Sater sent Cohen a number of emails about logistics for travelling to Russia for meetings. On December 19, 2015, Sater wrote, "Please call me. I have Yevgeny Dovskin on the line. He needs a copy of yours and Donald's passports. They need a scan of every page of the passports. Invitations and visas will be issued next week by VTB Bank to discuss financing for Trump Tower Moscow. Politically, neither Putin's office nor Ministry of Foreign Affairs cannot issue invites, so they are inviting commercially business. VTB is Russia's second biggest bank, and VTB Bank CEO Andriy Kostin will be at all meetings with Putin, so that it is a business meeting, not political. We will be invited to Russia consulate this week to receive invite and have visa issued." In response, Cohen texted Sater an image of his own passport. Cohen told the office that at one point he requested a copy of candidate Trump's passport from Rona Graf, Trump's executive assistant in the Trump Organization, and that Graf later brought Trump's passport to Cohen's office. The investigation did not, however, establish that the passport was forwarded to Sater. Into the spring of 2016, Sater and Cohen continued to discuss a trip to Moscow in connection with the Trump Moscow project. On April 20, 2016, Sater wrote Cohen, "The people want to know when you are coming." May 4, 2016, Sater followed up, "I had a chat with Moscow. Assuming the trip does happen, the question is before or after the convention. I said I believe, but don't know for sure, that it's probably after the convention. Obviously, the pre-meeting trip you only can happen anytime you want, but the two big guys were sick. The question, I said I would confirm and revert. Let me know about if I was right by saying I believe after Cleveland, and also when you want to speak to them and possibly fly over." Cohen responded, "My trip before Cleveland, Trump once he becomes a nominee after the convention." The day after this exchange, Sater tied Cohen's travel to Russia to the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, an annual event attended by prominent Russian politicians and businessmen. Sater told the office that he was informed by a business associate that Peskov wanted to invite Cohen to the forum. On May 5, 2016, Sater wrote to Cohen, "Peskov would like to invite you as his guest to the St. Petersburg Forum, which is Russia's Davos. It's June 16 to 19. He wants to meet there with you and possibly introduce you to either Putin or Medvedev, as they are not sure if one or both will be there. This is perfect. The entire business class of Russia will be there as well." He said, "Anything you want to discuss, including dates and subjects, are on table to discuss." Following day, Sater asked Cohen to confirm those dates would work for him to travel. Cohen wrote back, "Works for me." On June 9, 26, Sater sent Cohen a notice that Sater was completing the badges for the forum, adding, "Putin is there on the 17th. Very strong chance you will meet him as well." On June 13, 2016, Sater forwarded Cohen an invitation to the forum signed by the director of the Roscongress Foundation, the Russian entity organising the forum. Sater also sent Cohen a Russian visa application and asked him to send 2 passport photos. According to Cohen, the invitation gave no indication that Peskov had been involved in inviting him. Cohen was concerned that Russian officials were not actually involved or were not interested in meeting with him, as Sater had alleged, and so he decided not to go to the forum. On June 14, 2016, Cohen met Sater in the lobby of the Trump Tower in New York and informed him that he would not be travelling at that time. Candidate Trump's opportunities to travel to Russia. The investigation identified evidence that during the period the Trump Moscow project was under consideration, the possibility of candidate Trump visiting Russia arose in two contexts. First, in interviews with the office, Cohen stated that he discussed the subject of travelling to Russia with Trump twice, once in late 2015 and again in spring 2016. According to Cohen, Trump indicated a willingness to travel if he would assist the project significantly. On one occasion, Trump told Cohen to speak with then campaign manager Corey Lewandowski to coordinate the candidate's schedule. Cohen recalled that he spoke with Lewandowski, who suggested that they speak again when Cohen had actual dates to evaluate. Cohen indicated, however, that he knew that travel prior to the Republican National Convention would be impossible given the candidate's pre-existing commitments to the campaign. Second, like Cohen, Trump received and turned down an invitation to the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. In late December 2015, Mira Duma, a contact of Ivanka Trump's from the fashion industry, first passed along invitations for Ivanka Trump and candidate Trump from Sergei Prikodo. It's a hard one, that one. Deputy Prime Minister of the Russian Federation. On January 14, 2016, Rona Graf sent an email to Duma stating that Trump had honoured to be asked to participate in a highly prestigious forum event, but that he would have to decline the invitation given his very grueling and full travel schedule as presidential candidate. Graf asked Duma whether she recommended that Graf send a formal note to the Deputy Prime Minister declining his invitation. Duma replied with a formal note, "That would be great." It does not appear that Graf prepared the note immediately. According to written answers from President Trump, Graf received an email from Deputy Prime Minister Prikodko on March 17, 2016, again inviting Trump to participate in the 2016 forum in St. Petersburg. 2 weeks later, on March 31, 2016, Graf prepared for Trump's signature a two-paragraph letter declining the invitation. The letter stated that Trump's schedule has become extremely demanding because of the presidential campaign and that he already had several commitments in the United States for the time of the forum, but that he otherwise would have gladly given every consideration to attending such an important event. Graf forwarded the letter to another executive assistant in the Trump organization with instructions to print the document on letterhead for Trump to sign. At approximately the same time that the letter was being prepared, Robert Forsman, a New York-based investment banker, began reaching out to Graf to secure an in-person meeting with candidate Trump. According to Forsman, he had been asked by Anton Kobyakov, a Russian presidential aide involved with the Roscongress Foundation, to see if Trump could speak at the forum. Forsman first emailed Graf on March 31, 2016, following a phone introduction brokered through Trump business associate Mark Burnett, who produced the television show The Apprentice. In his email, Forsman referenced his long-standing personal and professional expertise in Russia and Ukraine, his work setting up an early private channel between Vladimir Putin and former US President George W. Bush, and an approach he had received from senior Kremlin officials about the candidate. Forsman asked Graf for a meeting with the candidate, Corey Lewandowski, or another relevant person to discuss this and other concrete things. Forsman felt uncomfortable discussing over unsecure email. On April 4, 2016, Graf forwarded Forsman's meeting request to Jessica Makia, another executive assistant to Trump. With no response forthcoming, Forsman twice sent reminders to Graf, first on April 26 and again on April 30, 2016. Graf sent an apology to Forsman and forwarded his April 26 email as well as initial March 2016 email to Lewandowski. On March 2, 2016, Graf forwarded Forsman's April 30 email, which suggested an alternative meeting with Donald Trump Jr. or Eric Trump so that Forsman could convey to them information that should be conveyed to the candidate personally or to someone the candidate absolutely trusts, to policy advisor Stephen Miller. No communications or other evidence obtained by the office indicate that the Trump campaign learned that Forsman was reaching out to invite the candidate to the forum, or that the campaign otherwise followed up with Forsman until after the election, when he interacted with the transition team as he pursued a possible position in the incoming administration. When interviewed by the office, Forsman denied that the specific approach from senior Kremlin officials noted in his March 31, 2016 email was anything other than Koboyakov's invitation to Ross Congress. According to Forsman, the concrete things he referenced in the same email were a combination of the invitation himself, Forsman's personal perspectives on the invitation, and Russian policy in general and details of a Ukraine plan supported by a US think tank, East-West Institute. Forsman told the office that Kobyakov had extended similar invitations through him to another Republican presidential campaign and one other politician. Forsman also said that Kobyakov had asked Forsman to invite Trump to speak after that other presidential candidate withdrew from the race, and the other politician's participation did not work out. Finally, Forsman claimed to have no plans to establish a back channel involving Trump, stating the reference to his involvement in the Bush-Putin back channel was meant to burnish his credentials to the campaign. Forsman commented that he had not recognised any of the experts announced as Trump's foreign policy team in March 2016 and wanted to secure an in-person meeting with the candidate to share his professional background and policy views, including that Trump should decline Kobyakov's invitation to speak at the forum. 2. George Papadopoulos. George Papadopoulos was a foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign from March 2016 to early October 2016. In late April 2016, Papadopoulos was told by a London-based professor, Joseph Mifsud, immediately after Mifsud's return from a trip to Moscow, that the Russian government had obtained dirt on candidate Clinton in the form of thousands of emails. 1 week later, on May 6, 2016, Papadopoulos suggested to a representative of a foreign government that the Trump campaign had received indications from the Russian government that it could assist the campaign through the anonymous release of information that would be damaging to candidate Clinton. Papadopoulos shared information about Russian dirt with people outside of the campaign, and the office investigated whether he also provided it to a campaign official. Papadopoulos and the campaign officials with whom he interacted told the office that they did not recall Papadopoulos passed them the information. Throughout the relevant period of time and for several months thereafter, Papadopoulos worked with Mifsud and 2 Russian nationals to arrange a meeting between the campaign and the Russian government. That meeting never came to pass. Origins of campaign work. In March 2016, Papadopoulos became a foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign. As early as the summer of 2015, he had sought a role as a policy advisor to the campaign, but in September 30, 2015 email, he was told that the campaign was not hiring policy advisors. In late 2015, Papadopoulos obtained a paid position on the campaign of Republican presidential candidate Ben Carson. Although Carson remained in the presidential race until early March 2016, Papadopoulos had stopped actively working for his campaign by early February 2016. At that time, Papadopoulos reached out to a contact at the London Centre for International Law Practice, LCILP, which billed itself as a unique institution comprising high-level professional international law practitioners dedicated to the advancement of global legal knowledge and the practice of international law. Papadopoulos said that he had finished his role with the Carson campaign and asked if LCILP was hiring. In early February, Papadopoulos agreed to join LCILP and arrived in London to begin work. Just check the footnotes of the previous page. Nothing too interesting there. As he was taking his position at LCILP, Papadopoulos contacted Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski via LinkedIn and emailed campaign official Michael Glasner about his interest in joining the Trump campaign. On March 2, 2016, Papadopoulos sent Glasner another message reiterating his interest. Glasner passed along word of Papadopoulos' interest to another campaign official, Joy Lutz, who notified Papadopoulos by email that she had been told by Glasner to introduce Papadopoulos to Sam Clovis, the Trump campaign's national co-chair and chief policy advisor. At the time of Papadopoulos' March 2 email, the media was criticising the Trump campaign for lack of experienced foreign policy or national security advisors within its ranks. To address that issue, senior campaign officials asked Clovis to put a foreign policy team together on short notice. After receiving Papadopoulos' name from Lutz, Clovis performed a Google search on Papadopoulos, learned that he had worked at the Hudson Institute, and believed that he had credibility on energy issues. On March 3, 2016, Clovis arranged to speak with Papadopoulos by phone to discuss Papadopoulos joining the campaign as a foreign policy advisor. On March 6, 2016, the two spoke. Papadopoulos recalled that Russia was mentioned as a topic, and he understood from the conversation that Russia would be an important aspect of the campaign's foreign policy. At the end of the conversation, Clovis offered Papadopoulos a role as a foreign policy advisor to the campaign. Papadopoulos accepted the offer. Initial Russia-related contacts. Approximately a week after signing on as a foreign policy advisor, Papadopoulos travelled to Rome, Italy, as part of his duties with LCILP. The purpose of the trip was to meet officials affiliated with Link Campus University, a for-profit institution headed by a former Italian government official. During the visit, Papadopoulos was introduced to Joseph Mifsud. Mifsud is a Maltese national who worked as a professor at the London Academy of Diplomacy in London, England. Although Mifsud worked out of London and was also affiliated with LCILP, the encounter in Rome was the first time that Papadopoulos met him. Mifsud maintained various Russian contacts while living in London, as described further below. Among his contacts was redacted, a one-time employee of the IRA, the entity that carried out the Russian social media campaign. See Volume 1, Section 2. In January and February 2016, Mifsud and Redaction discussed Redaction possibly meeting in Russia. The investigation did not identify evidence of them meeting. Later in the spring 2016, Redaction was also in contact. Redaction that was linked to an employee of the Russian Ministry of Defense. And that account had overlapping contacts with the group of Russian military-controlled Facebook accounts that included accounts used to promote DC Leaks releases in the course of the GRU's hack and release operations. According to Papadopoulos, Mifsud at first seemed uninterested in Papadopoulos when they met in Rome. After Papadopoulos informed Mifsud about his role in the Trump campaign, however, Mifsud appeared to take greater interest in Papadopoulos. The two discussed Mifsud's European and Russian contacts and had a general discussion about Russia. Mifsud also offered to introduce Papadopoulos to European leaders and others with contacts to the Russian government. Papadopoulos told the office that Mifsud's claim of substantial connections with the Russian government officials interested Papadopoulos, who thought that such connections could increase his importance as a policy advisor to the Trump campaign. On March 17, 2016, Papadopoulos returned to London. 4 days later, candidate Trump publicly named him as a member of the Foreign Policy and National Security Advisory Team, chaired by Senator Jeff Sessions, describing Papadopoulos as an oil and energy consultant and an excellent guy. On March 24, 2016, Papadopoulos met with Mifsud in London. Mifsud was accompanied by a Russian female named Olga Polonskaya. Mifsud introduced Polonskaya as a former student of his who had connections to Vladimir Putin. Papadopoulos understood at the time that Polonskaya may have been Putin's niece, but later learned that this was not true. During the meeting, Polonskaya offered to help Papadopoulos establish contacts in Russia and stated that the Russian ambassador in London was a friend of hers. Based on this interaction, Papadopoulos expected Mifsud and Polonskaya to introduce him to the Russian ambassador in London, but that did not occur. Following his meeting with Mifsud, Papadopoulos sent an email to members of the Trump campaign's foreign policy advisory team. The subject line of the message was meeting with Russian leadership, including Putin. Oh gosh, the message stated in pertinent part, I just finished a very productive lunch with a good friend of mine, Joseph Mifsud, the director of the London Academy of Diplomacy, who introduced me to both Putin's niece and the Russian ambassador in London, who also acts as the deputy foreign minister. The topic of the lunch was to arrange a meeting between us and the Russian leadership to discuss US-Russia ties under President Trump. They were keen to host us in a neutral city or directly in Moscow. They said the leadership, including Putin, is ready to meet with us and Mr. Trump should there be interest. Waiting for everyone's thoughts on moving forward with this very important issue. Just one of the footnotes on this page, we've got Papadopoulos' statements to the campaign were false. As noted above, the woman he met was not Putin's niece. He had not met the Russian ambassador in London, and the ambassador did not also serve as Russia's deputy foreign minister. Continuing on, Papadopoulos' message came at a time when Clovis perceived a shift in the campaign's approach toward Russia, from one of engaging with Russia through the NATO framework and taking a strong stance on Russian aggression in Ukraine, to redaction. That's redacted the next bit. Clovis' response to Papadopoulos, however, did not reflect that shift. Replying to Papadopoulos and the other members of the Foreign Policy Advisory copied in the initial email, Clovis wrote, "This is most informative. Let me work it through the campaign. No commitments until we see how this plays out. My thought is that we, pardon me, probably should not go forward with any meetings with the Russians until we have occasion to sit with our NATO allies, especially France, Germany and Great Britain. We need to reassure our allies that we are not going to advance anything with Russia until we have everyone on the same page. More thoughts later today. Great work." C. March 31, Foreign Policy Team Meeting. The campaign held a meeting of the Foreign Policy Advisory Team with Senator Sessions and candidate Trump approximately 1 week later on March 31, 2016 in Washington, D.C. The meeting, which was intended to generate press coverage for the campaign, took place at the Trump International Hotel. Papadopoulos flew to Washington for the event. At the meeting, Senator Sessions sat one end of an oval table while Trump sat at the other. As reflected in the photograph below, which is posted on Trump's Instagram account, Papadopoulos sat between the two seats to Sessions' left. We got the photo. Oh, there's the photo. The photo is there in the paper. During the meeting, each of the newly announced foreign policy advisors introduced themselves and briefly described the areas of experience or expertise. Papadopoulos spoke about his previous work in the energy sector, then brought up a potential meeting with Russian officials. Specifically, Papadopoulos told the group that he had learned through his contacts in London that Putin wanted to meet with candidate Trump, that these connections could help arrange that meeting. Trump and Sessions both reacted to Papadopoulos' statement. Papadopoulos and campaign advisor J.D. Gordon, who told investigators in an interview that he had a crystal clear recollection of the meeting, have stated that Trump was interested in and receptive to the idea of a meeting with Putin. Papadopoulos understood Sessions to be similarly supportive of his efforts to arrange a meeting. Gordon and two other attendees, however, recall that Sessions generally opposed the proposal, though they differ in their accounts of the concerns he voiced or the strength of the opposition he expressed. I'll just flip to the footnote on that. No, it's just a reference to the interview. D. George Papadopoulos learns that Russia has dirt in the form of Clinton emails. Whatever Sessions' precise words on 31 meeting were, Papadopoulos did not understand Sessions or anyone else in the Trump campaign to have directed that he refrain from making further efforts to arrange a meeting between the campaign and the Russian government. To the contrary, Papadopoulos told the office that he understood the campaign to be supportive of his efforts to arrange such a meeting. Accordingly, when he returned to London, Papadopoulos resumed those efforts. Throughout April 2016, Papadopoulos continued to correspond with, meet with and seek Russia contacts through Mifsud and at times Polanskaya. For example, within a week of her initial March 24 meeting with him, Polanskaya attempted to send Papadopoulos a text message, which email exchange show to have been drafted or edited by Mifsud, addressing Papadopoulos' wish to engage with the Russian Federation. When Papadopoulos learned from Mifsud that Polanskaya had tried to message him, he sent her an email seeking another meeting. Polanskaya responded the next day that she was back in St. Petersburg but would be very pleased to support Papadopoulos' initiatives between our two countries and to meet him again. Papadopoulos stated in reply that he thought a good step would be to introduce him to the Russian ambassador in London and that he would like to talk to the ambassador or anyone else you recommend about a potential foreign policy trip to Russia. Mifsud, who had been copied on the email exchanges, replied on the morning of April 11, 2016. He wrote, "This is already been agreed. I am flying to Moscow on the 18th for a Valdai meeting, plus other meetings at the Duma. We will talk tomorrow." The two bodies referenced by Mifsud are part of or associated with the Russian government. The Duma is a Russian legislative assembly, while Valdai refers to the Valdai Discussion Club, a Moscow-based group that is close to Russia's foreign policy establishment. Papadopoulos thanked Mifsud and said that he would see him tomorrow. For her part, Polanskaya responded that she had already alerted my personal links to our conversation and your request, that we are all very excited the possibility of a good relationship with Mr. Trump, and that the Russian Federation would love to welcome him once his candidature would be officially announced. Papadopoulos and Mifsud's mentions of seeing each other tomorrow referenced meeting the two had scheduled for the next morning, April 12, 2016, in the Andes Hotel in London. Papadopoulos acknowledged the meeting during interviews with the office, and records from Papadopoulos' UK cell phone and his internet search history all indicate that the meeting took place. Following the meeting, Mifsud travelled as planned to Moscow. On April 18, 2016, while in Russia, Mifsud introduced Papadopoulos over email to Ivan Timofeev, a member of the Russian International Affairs Council, RIAC. Mifsud had described Timofeev as having maybe that's what it is, as having connection with the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, MFA, the executive entity in Russia responsible for Russian foreign relations. Over the next several weeks, Papadopoulos and Timofeev had multiple conversations over Skype and email about setting the groundwork for a potential meeting between the campaign and Russian government officials. Papadopoulos told the office that on one Skype call he believed that his conversation with Timofeev was being monitored or supervised by an unknown third party because Timofeev spoke in an official manner and Papadopoulos heard odd noises on the line. Timofeev also told Papadopoulos in an April 25, 2016 email that he had just spoken to Igor Ivanov, the president of RIAC, Russian International Affairs Council, and former foreign minister of Russia, and conveyed Ivanov's advice about how best to arrange a Moscow visit. After a stop in Rome, Mifsud returned to England on April 25, 2016. The next day, Papadopoulos met Mifsud for breakfast at the Andes Hotel, same location as their last meeting. I'm just checking the footnotes on this page. Nothing too important there. During that meeting, Mifsud told Papadopoulos that he had met with high-level Russian government officials during his recent trip to Moscow. Mifsud also said that on the trip he learned that the Russians had obtained dirt on candidate Hillary Clinton. As Papadopoulos later stated to the FBI, Mifsud said that the dirt was in the form of emails of Clinton and that they have thousands of emails. On May 6, 2016, 10 days after the meeting from Mifsud, Papadopoulos suggested to a representative of a foreign government, that's us, that's Australia, that the Trump campaign had received indications from the Russian government that it could assist the campaign through the anonymous release of information that would be damaging to Hillary Clinton. Russia-related communications with the campaign. While he was discussing with his foreign contacts a potential meeting of campaign officials with Russian government officials, Papadopoulos kept campaign officials apprised of his efforts. On April 25, 2016, the day before Mifsud told Papadopoulos about the emails, Papadopoulos wrote to Senior Policy Advisor Stephen Mueller that the Russian government was an open invitation by Putin. The Russian government has an open invitation by Putin for Mr. Trump to meet with him when he is ready, and that the advantage of being in London is that these governments tend to speak a bit more openly in neutral cities. On April 27, 2016, after his meeting with Mifsud, Papadopoulos wrote a second message to Mueller stating that some interesting messages were coming in from Moscow about a trip when the time is right. The same day, Papadopoulos sent a similar email to campaign manager Corey Lewandowski, telling Lewandowski that Papadopoulos had been receiving a lot of calls over the last month about Putin wanting to host Trump and the team when the time is right. Papadopoulos' Russia-related communications with campaign officials continued throughout spring and summer 2016. On May 4, 2016, he forwarded to Lewandowski an email from Timofeev raising the possibility of a meeting in Moscow, asking Lewandowski whether that was something we want to move forward with. The next day, Papadopoulos forwarded the same Timofeev email to Sam Clovis, adding to the top of the email, Russia update. He included the same email on a May 21, 2016 message to senior campaign official Paul Manafort under the subject line, request from Russia to meet Mr. Trump, stating that Russia has been eager to meet Mr. Trump for quite some time and have been reaching out to me to discuss. Just checking the footnotes there. Manafort forwarded this message to another campaign official without including Papadopoulos and stated, let's discuss. We need someone to communicate that Trump is not doing these trips. It should be someone low level in the campaign so as not to send any signal. On June 1, 2016, Papadopoulos replied to an earlier email chain with Lewandowski about a Russia visit, asking if Lewandowski wanted to have a call about this topic and whether we were following up with it. After Lewandowski told Papadopoulos to connect with Clovis because he was running point, Papadopoulos emailed Clovis that the Russian MFA was asking him if Mr. Trump is interested in visiting Russia at some point. Papadopoulos wrote in an email that he wanted to pass this info along for you to decide what's best to do with it and what message I should send or to ignore. After several email and Skype exchanges with Timofeyev, Papadopoulos sent one more email to Lewandowski on June 19, 2016, Lewandowski's last day as campaign manager. The email stated that the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs contacted him and asked whether if Mr. Trump could not travel to Russia, campaign representatives such as Papadopoulos could attend meetings. Papadopoulos told Lewandowski that he was willing to make the trip off the record if it's in the interest of Mr. Trump and the campaign to meet specific people. Following Lewandowski's departure from the campaign, Papadopoulos communicated with Clovis and Walid Fares, another member of the Foreign Policy Advisory Team, about an off-the-record meeting between the campaign and the Russian government officials, or with Papadopoulos, other Russia connections, Mifsud and Timofeyev. Papadopoulos also interacted directly with Clovis and Fares in connection with the summit of the Transatlantic Parliamentary Group on Counterterrorism, TAG, a group for which Fares was a co-secretary general. On July 16, 2016, Papadopoulos attended the Transatlantic Parliamentary Group on Counterterrorism, TAG summit in Washington, D.C., where he sat next to Clovis, as reflected in the photo below, and there's a photo below. Although Clovis claimed to have no recollection of attending the TAG summit, there's a photo of him, Papadopoulos remembered discussing Russia and a foreign policy trip with Clovis and Fares during the event. Papadopoulos' recollection is consistent with emails sent before and after the TAG summit. The pre-summit messages included a July 11, 2016 email in which Fares suggested meeting Papadopoulos the day after the summit to chat, and a July 12 message in the same chain in which Fares advised Papadopoulos that other summit attendees are very nervous about Russia, so be aware. 10 days after the summit, Papadopoulos sent an email to Mifsud listing Fares and Clovis as other participants in a potential meeting at the London Academy of Diplomacy. Finally, Papadopoulos' recollection is also consistent with handwritten notes from a journal that he kept at the time. Those notes, which are reprinted in part below, appear to refer to potential September 2016 meetings in London with representatives of the Office of Putin, and suggest that Fares, Clovis and Papadopoulos, Walid Sami, would attend without the official backing of the campaign. No official letter, no message from Trump. And there is a copy of Papadopoulos' notes. Later communications indicate that Clovis determined that Clovis could not travel. August 15, 2016, Papadopoulos emailed Clovis that he had received requests from multiple foreign governments, even Russia, for closed-door workshops, consultations abroad, and asked whether there was still interest for Clovis, Fares and Papadopoulos to go on that trip. Clovis copied Fares in his response, which said that he could not travel before the election, but that he would encourage Papadopoulos and Walid to make the trips if it is feasible. Just a footnote about the notes there. Papadopoulos declined to assist in deciphering his notes, telling investigators that he could not read his own handwriting from the journal. The notes, however, appear to read as listed in the column to the left. And it looks, it must have been the investigators did the interpreting of the notes. Okay, Papadopoulos was dismissed from the Trump campaign in early 2016. Was there anything before that? No. After an interview he gave to the Russian news agency Interfax generated adverse publicity. F. Trump campaign knowledge of dirt. Papadopoulos admitted telling at least one individual outside of the campaign, specifically the then Greek Foreign Minister, about Russia's obtaining Clinton-related emails. In addition, a different foreign government informed the FBI that 10 days after meeting with Mifsud in late April 2016, Papadopoulos suggested that the Trump campaign had received indications from the Russian government that it could assist the campaign through the anonymous release of information that would be damaging to Hillary Clinton. This conversation occurred after the GRU spearfished Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta and stole his emails, and the GRU hacked into the DCCC and DNCC Volume 1, Sections 3A and above. Such disclosures raised questions about whether Papadopoulos informed any Trump campaign official about the emails. When interviewed, Papadopoulos and the campaign officials who interacted with him told the office that they could not recall Papadopoulos sharing the information that Russia had obtained dirt on candidate Clinton in the form of emails, or that Russia could assist the campaign through the anonymous release of information about Clinton. Papadopoulos stated that he could not clearly recall having told anyone on the campaign and wavered about whether he accurately remembered an incident in which Clovis had been upset about hearing Papadopoulos tell Clovis that Papadopoulos thought they have her emails. The campaign officials who interacted or corresponded with Papadopoulos have similarly stated with varying degrees of certainty that he did not tell them. Senior policy advisor Stephen Mueller, for example, did not remember hearing anything from Papadopoulos or Clovis about Russia having details or dirt on candidate Clinton. Clovis stated that he did not recall anyone, including Papadopoulos, having given him non-public information that a foreign government might be in possession of material damaging to Hillary Clinton. It's further paragraph redacted there. No documentary evidence and nothing in the email accounts or other communication facilities reviewed by the office shows that Papadopoulos shared this information with the campaign. Additional George Papadopoulos contact, Part G. The office investigated another Russia-related contact with Papadopoulos. The office was not able to explore the contact because the individual at issue, Sergei Milyan, remained out of the country since the inception of our investigation and declined to meet with members of the office despite our repeated efforts to obtain an interview. Papadopoulos first contacted Milyan via LinkedIn on July 15, 2016, shortly after Papadopoulos had attended the TAG summit with Clovis. Milyan, an American citizen who is a native of Belarus, introduced himself as president of the New York-based Russian-American Chamber of Commerce and claimed that through that position he had insider knowledge and direct access to the top hierarchy in Russian politics. Papadopoulos asked Timofeyev whether he had heard of Milyan. Although Timofeyev said no, Papadopoulos met Milyan in New York City. The meetings took place on July 30 and August 1, 2016. Afterwards, Milyan invited Papadopoulos to attend and potentially speak at 2 international energy conferences, including one that was held in Moscow September 2016. Papadopoulos ultimately did not attend either conference. On July 31, 2016, following his first in-person meeting with Milyan, Papadopoulos emailed Trump campaign official Bo Denisik to say that he'd been contacted by some leaders of Russian-American voters here in the US about their interest in voting for Mr. Trump, and to ask whether he should put you in touch with the group US-Russia Chamber of Commerce. Denisik thanked Papadopoulos for taking the initiative, but asked him to hold off with outreach to Russian Americans because too many articles had already portrayed the campaign, then campaign chairman Paul Manafort and candidate Trump as being pro-Russian. On August 23, 2016, Milyan sent a Facebook message to Papadopoulos promising that he would share with you a disruptive technology that might be instrumental in your political work for the campaign. Papadopoulos claimed to have no recollection of this matter. On November 9, 2016, shortly after the election, Papadopoulos arranged to meet Milyan in Chicago to discuss business opportunities, including potential work with Russian billionaires who are not under sanctions. The meeting took place on November 14, 2016 at the Trump Hotel and Tower in Chicago. According to Papadopoulos, the two men discussed partnering on business deals, but Papadopoulos perceived that Milyan's attitude toward him changed when Papadopoulos stated that he was only pursuing private sector opportunities and was not interested in a job in the administration. The two remained in contact, however, and had extended online discussions about possible opportunities in Russia. The two also arranged to meet at a Washington, D.C. bar when both attended Trump's inauguration in late January 2017. And I think we might stop there. That's the end of George Papadopoulos, and we're heading into a discussion about Carter Page.